May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be ever mindful of thee, O Lord, my strength and my salvation. Amen. Would you please be seated? I'm a happy guy, I really am. I've got that old Andy Williams tune going through my head right now. It's the most wonderful time of the year. And it is for me. June 1st to September 30th, living in Florida, is the most wonderful time of the year. It's hurricane season. And hurricane season is the only time of the year that Susan lets me go to Home Depot unsupervised. I can buy whatever I want, no questions asked. She trusts me, poor girl. She trusts me to do what is right and not, well, I won't go down that. I love power tools. You go to my garage and I have all these empty prescription pill bottles filled with different size screws and nuts and screwdrivers and tools, and I inherited all of my father's, and man, I could run a full garage fleet out of my garage. I've got so much junk in there. But I love mechanical things. I love fiddling with my hands. And hurricane season is always that time of year when I can go crazy. The longest with Susan and I and the girls ever lived in one place was Vero Beach. We lived there for 10 years. Either the law's been chasing me all this time or I get being moved by the church. We were there from about 2000 to, no, I'm wrong, 2000 to 2014. Well, 14 years, not 10 years. I'm getting old, it's all passing by very quickly. And my favorite time is the hurricane season because we lived on the barrier island in Vero Beach. For those of you who don't know Vero Beach, that there's or the East Coast, the barrier islands start at Cape Canaveral. And it goes all the way down to Miami Beach, and Key Biscayne is the very bottom of it. Now, some barrier islands are very, very lovely. Palm Beach is a barrier island. And if I told you that I lived on the east side of A1A in Vero Beach, now, if that were Palm Beach, that meant I must have $10 or $15 million to spend. But I lived on the east side of A1A in Vero Beach. Well, of course, St. Elizabeth's Episcopal Church must have a really great housing allowance. No, it's not developed yet. Development is coming south from Melbourne. Development is coming north from Palm Beach County. Fort Pierce always gets in the way, thank goodness. But we still have that stretch where it's really undeveloped. If you drive on 95 South and you see there is an exit for Vero Beach. And if you get off that exit and you make a mistake and go west, you will see McDonald's, a Shell station, an outlet mall that's been going out of business for about 10 years. And then you will see nothing but cows, orange groves, and sugarcane till you get to Yeehaw Junction. Now, I've been to Yeehaw Junction. It's nothing. And then you keep going some more till you get to Lake Wales. You've got 100 miles of nothing. There's no development yet on the west side of I-95. It's a very slow, it's a very lovely pace of life. It was a wonderful place to raise our children. And to be able to raise our children on the beach. It was really quite nice. Now, the downside was, every so often we have these things called hurricanes. And 2004 was one of my favorite years. That's the year that I think you had a hurricane come north across this way. Well, we had two that came ashore, one on Hutchison Island and one on Vero Beach. And Hutchison Island is the same piece of land, but it's, say, Lucey County. It's the next part down. Vero Beach turns into Hutchison Island. And that first hurricane was in August, and now, Vero Beach is the West Palm Beach TV market, so we would watch Channel 5 News, and we'd get all excited about the preparations being made, and we would be at the very northern it's like watching news from Tampa. Citrus County is the very, and it's like we're in Alaska or someplace. Northern temperatures are going to be cold tonight. Okay. Well, we start getting ready. And that hurricane's barreling toward us. It's passing between the Bahamas and Cuba. And the alert's coming, it's going to go up the coast. So I say to Susan, I need to go to Home Depot. And she lets me buy a circular table saw. See, I needed to put up shutters. And I had to make sure that the shutters were flush into the window setting. And the only way I could do that is with a circular saw on a table setting, because I needed to be able to slide it, And don't laugh, she didn't laugh. And I got a circular saw out of that hurricane. And I still have all my fingers too, so it's a great bonus. And so the storm's coming. And I take all the porch furniture, and they tell you to throw your porch furniture into the pool. Well, my porch furniture floated, so that wasn't a good idea. So I grabbed that and I put it in the garage. And you take in your potted plants and trash cans and anything that can blow away. And of course, you've always got a neighbor who's gone north for the summer and who's left 50 projectiles right on the other side of their fence, all set to be launched at your window. Well, the storm's getting closer. And we locate our children, we locate the cat, we locate the dog. And just as the storm is about to hit, because the sheriff's department was driving up and down A1A, and with the little bullhorns saying, at 5 o'clock, the bridges are going up, curfew. If you're not off the island, tough. We can't rescue you if you've got a problem. You must evacuate now. We got that word, and that was the word where I start hammering on plywood on the front door. Well, we evacuated to West Palm Beach, where my mother and father were living. And we stayed there for 3 days. We drove up north when the all clear was given, and we crossed the causeway, and it didn't look too bad. There are a few trees down. Most of the aluminum screens were wrecked. You live in Florida, you live in the East Coast, your aluminum screen is going to get wrecked every 5 years. It just comes with living here. Like a little white dog. You just have to expect to have that happen. And we pulled up to our house, and it was great. There were some trees down. The neighbor's stuff had all now moved into my yard, her potted plants and everything, but no broken windows. But because it was just, I had done such a wonderful job. Well, I take the hammer that I brought with me, and I undo the nails over the front door, and open the door, and the house is fine except we didn't have any flooding, but the wind had been blowing, and it was so much water in the air that the wind blowing sideways had blown water underneath the front door jamb. And she got this throw rug for a wedding present. All of our wedding presents are hers for some reason. That got ruined because it sat wet for 3 days. Which I didn't mind. It was pretty ugly anyway. As for my evil Aunt Carol, but that was another story. So apart from tossing out the rug and cleaning up outside, it was a pretty good storm. Wouldn't you know, 2 weeks later, another storm was approaching. And I say to Susan, I'm going to make sure nothing bad happens this time. I will guarantee that this front door and this front hallway will be perfect. You have nothing to fear. Now, to do that, I need to get a nail gun. Not just not a cordless nail gun. Man, if I had had one of these when I was Bella's age, the things I would have done with it. So I got a nail gun, and I also got some plastic sheeting. And I put plastic sheeting down on the inside of the windows. And we cleaned up the neighbor's yard, put all the stuff in her pool, and it all sank. Gathered up all the stuff that was loose, pulled the stuff that I couldn't sort of dispose of to one side, hope it would blow into her yard after the next storm. And then the time comes where the sheriff goes up and down the highway, A1A, and says, evacuation. please leave immediately. Bridges will go up and they won't be let down until further notice. So, put up plastic sheeting on the inside. Put down the plywood. Then I put plastic sheeting over the plywood. And then I put sandbags all in front of the window and along the edge of the garage. Man, I couldn't have done a better job, and it was only possible because I had a pneumatic nail gun.
Cordless.
Cordless. Well, this storm, if you remember the hurricanes, sat. And it sat over, and it came ashore on Vero Beach, about a mile south. It came ashore on that part of town we call South Beach. It's a little cheaper than the other South Beach, but still. And it sat over Indian River, St. Lucie County, for almost a week. So we were down in my mother's place for about 10 days. And finally they gave the all clear. And we headed back. And the storm was the same category of storm, 3 or 4. It wasn't an end-all all storms. It was a bad storm. And so we pull up, and as we're crossing the causeway, I'm noticing this storm did a lot more damage. And Susan and I surmised because it had sat there for so long, the water and the wind and the waves had just taken their toll. Lots of trees down, lots of roofs missing. As you cross the South Bridge to Vero Beach, there's some millionaire has a beautiful home with his own dock and a big cabin cruiser. And the cabin cruiser had been lifted out of the intercoastal waterway and planted in between his swimming pool and his house. It was quite exciting to watch. And as we're driving down the road, you see all these little yellow signs everywhere that are hammered on the front doors of people's homes. Because the Sheriff's Department, the emergency management, will basically check to see if you're in a damaged area. They'll tell you whether your home is habitable. In other words, and you have to go up and read what's on the sign. And if you've broken gas mains or down electrical wires or things like that, they will not let you back in until imminent health hazards are taken care of. So we're driving down, we finally get to our street, we turn in, and my whole vision is focused on that front door. Because I had promised Susan, and I am young, I am strong, my credit card works, I am an American. There's nothing I cannot do. And sure enough, I get out and I look at that door. There's a yellow sign tacked on it, but I don't bother reading it. And I look it up, I look it down, and it's perfect. And I step through the wall. And I look at the back of it. And it is completely bone dry. The light shining through the remains of the rafters. Showing down on that that front door and the chimney were the only things that hadn't fallen down. Do you know what asbestos and insulation smells like after it's been wet for a week? It smells like you've got 1,000 cats. The house melted, the stucco and everything melted. And everything was destroyed. But that door survived. That door survived. I can protect my front door from a nuclear blast. But while that happens, my home is destroyed. And this is the story of my faith life. This is the story of George Conger. I think I can control my life. I'm strong, I'm young, I've got all these things that I can do to take care of myself in this world. And I can protect the door, but while the house is knocked down around me. Because I don't trust in God. Really trust in God? Do you really trust in God? Are you like me? You think that if you get a nail gun, if you get aluminum, if you get sheeting, if you do all the things the world tells you to do, you can sort of say, okay, God, I got this one covered. You take care of the other stuff. Or do you fully, really trust in God? Friends, I've reached the point in my life, and thank God I still have all my fingers. But you can't build your way out of life's problems. You can't fix other people. You can't fix the problems of this earth. You can't end the cruelty, the poverty, and the just inhumanity by our own efforts. You've got to start with something else. And that's getting on your knees and praying to God. Prayer is the only tool. Prayer is the only key in which you start the process of securing your life. If prayer is not what guides you, what leads you, I am absolutely certain that you will be able to take care of discrete elements of your life, but then the rest of it will all fall apart. It'll all collapse. This is Pentecost Sunday. This is the day we celebrate when the church was born. What do we mean by the church was born? Well, if we start back in John's Gospel, Jesus in the upper room turns to his disciples and says, I breathe upon you, the Holy Spirit may enter you. He passes on this Spirit to his 12 disciples. Up until this point, the Holy Spirit had not dwelt upon this earth. The temple in Jerusalem, Solomon is quite clear about this, is not the home of the Spirit of God. It's just the outward sign of his magnificence and power, and where we have the symbols of his reign. But it's not like the movie Indiana Jones, where God is in some box that is radioactive. It's the symbol, it's the source. Solomon quite clearly says God cannot be contained by a building. His Spirit is so powerful. It's not here, there, anywhere. Yet when Jesus breathed his Holy Spirit on the 12 disciples, it entered into their souls. But it didn't go anyplace else. Jesus is crucified. He dies. He's resurrected and he returns and he spends 40 days with his apostles. He is with them. And he tells them, I am leaving you now. But my Father will send to you the Comforter, the Holy Spirit. I will be with you also, always, through the power of the Spirit. Wait for it. Don't leave Jerusalem. Don't go anywhere. And so they sit and wait for 10 days after the ascension of Jesus, where he rose into heaven. And this 10th day is Pentecost Sunday. And they hear a sound like a tornado, a freight train. But there's no wind. It's just the noise. And all of Jerusalem hears this. So through the ears, they're experiencing the power of God. And it's not just the disciples. It's that gathered Christian community of all the believers. They've all gathered together in Jerusalem. And they see manifestations of light that they can only describe as tongues of fire appearing above the heads of people. Call it today an aura, if you will, if you like that stuff. They see and they hear manifestations of God. And then, wham! The Spirit descends upon all of them. And ever since that day, the church was born. And the Holy Spirit now dwells on earth. Where does it dwell? In the heart of each believer. This is what baptism signifies. You don't wait till my hot little hands touch you to be baptized. The Spirit is there, and the ceremony is the outward sign of the inward transformation. And this is what makes us different from Pentecostals. Pentecostals pray for revival. They pray for an outpouring of the Holy Spirit to come down and fill this building. We believe it's already here, in your heart. And we follow what Paul says here in our reading from Romans, where he talks about the connection between the Holy Spirit and the human spirit. All who are led by the Spirit of God are children of God. All of us who follow the Holy Spirit are God's children. We are his children by adoption. Jesus is his Son, and we are all adopted sons. And because we're adopted, we're heirs, fully heirs of all the gifts that the Father has to bring. And Paul writes on to is that very Spirit, the Spirit of God, bearing witness with our spirit that we witness to the world. The Spirit works not by descending as a thunderclap upon us where we have to hold up stakes and go make all these noises, but it's already there. And it's our job as believers to connect the two. The Holy Spirit with our spirit. And how do you do that? Prayer. Prayer. Prayer is, if you will, plugging in your electrical socket into God's outlet that connects everything. The problem is most of us don't know how to pray. Most of us, our prayer life is like my DIY life. It's very fixed, very finite, but it's far from complete. When you pray, are you praying in the form of witchcraft or incantation? Oh Lord, do me a favor, give me this, give me that. If you only gave me the lotto numbers, what good I could do in this world? Oh Lord, in other words, are you, when you praying, trying to change God? If you are, what you're doing is called witchcraft, because you're trying to change God through your words. This is the heresy of the prosperity gospel. This is the heresy that says, if you only have enough faith, if you're only good enough, God will reward you by listening to your prayers. You can change God's mind and become rich and thin and powerful. That, friends, is witchcraft. That's seeking to change God for your own benefit, your own advantage. And prayer's got nothing to do with that. Prayer is connecting to God so that God changes you. It may be God's will that you win the lottery. It may be God's will that you don't. But when you truly connect with the power of the Holy Spirit, these things become as nothing to the knowledge of the presence of God and power in your life. Oh, I saw this again and again and again as my work as a hospice priest. When I started out, I'd get a little annoyed because, secretly in the back of my head, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if I could be like Oral Roberts at my own university TV channel? Because I would pray for people and boom! Cancer's gone. Boom! The legs pop back on. Boom! All this stuff happens. I had approximately 1,200, we call them clients, patients. Nobody grew a new arm. Nobody got out of bed. Nobody had a good old-fashioned Pat Robertson 700 Club miracle. Maybe I didn't ask for enough money, I don't know. But what I did see time and again were miracles happening in their spiritual life, their emotional life, where they came to a place of sanctification and holiness, where a life of brokenness and abandonment, they were able to let it go and connect into something far greater. See, friends, prayer is not a narcotic that dulls your pain. Your hurt, your loss, your sadness, it's going to still be there. But you've got something greater. But it's drowned out by the volume of the presence of God in your life. I saw this last week. Yesterday we buried Alice Klingon from this church. She died Monday afternoon. I visited her on Thursday. She was at Grand Living in their locked unit. I visited and I gave her last rites, and I was there with her brother, Alice's son, Kathy Harrington's brother. And we prayed, and Alice was restless. The doctors said, it's any time now, any moment now. And Alice was semi-coherent. She'd come in and come out, come in and come out. But it was quite obvious Alice didn't want it all. And in talking to Alice, because she's wanted to go for a long time, but what we were able I came back another time and prayed, of course, but you know, Alice knows me, and I'm sort of tied into a worldview. So, you know, I did my best. But then on Monday afternoon, the hospice chaplain came. He'd never met Alice before. He's a new face, and he asked the children to leave the room. And he spoke and met with Alice, and he gave her permission to go, that it's okay. God will take care of your children. It's okay. And Alice died 15 minutes later. What happened in those 15 minutes? Well, medically we know what happened. Her heart stopped and all this and that. Spiritually, Alice was able to finally plug into the assurance of God that all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all shall be well. I saw that again and again and again in my life. When my mother died, she hung on at the hospice house on South Canto Highway. And finally I had to send my father home. And my brother took him home, and it was just my mother and I. And when my father finally left, that's when she could let go and die. What am I talking about? The power of prayer is how God energizes you, how He works in you. I've just used some extreme examples, but it's something how we live our daily life, allowing God to change us, renew us, transform us. If you think you're going to change God by mumbling a few words, been there, done that, it doesn't work. Others have tried it for centuries. It doesn't work. Don't waste your time. But when you pray, ask God to change you. Now, His will for you may be completely out of what you expect. It may be completely in line with what you hope for. I don't know. But let prayer be your guide. Don't make the mistake that I have made. And frankly, this is the American male sin of each of us wanting to be John Wayne. Of doing it for Frank Sinatra. I'm going to do it my way. That's noble, that's notable, but it's not God's way. Allow God to energize you, to change you. Get on your knees, repent, and pray for the power of the Holy Spirit to come. It's already there. If you're baptized, if you're a Christian, you don't have to wait for some big bang in the sky. You just have to open that door to speak.